everyone, this is Chelsea and this is just a simple tutorial video on how to make a simple pot shape made of clay using the slab building technique. I'm using red clay. If I say redstone at any point in this video instead of red clay, it's because my son's playing Minecraft a lot at the moment and he keeps telling me about redstone, which is a material in Minecraft, so apologies. If I say redstone, I mean red clay. So I have my piece. I've kind of estimated roughly how big a piece I need just to make a small pot. I'm probably going to have excess with this. You can do this with any of the types of clay that are available in the kits. First of all, I'll show you the tools that I'm going to use for this. You can use a needle tool for this, so it's just a tool with a sharp point on the end. Before I had the actual tools, I was literally just using a large nail. So like the one you'd put in a wall, but these are really handy and you'll have one of these in the kits anyway. But if you find yourself in the future not having this available, a nail that you would put on a wall is fine. This is a knife tool, so this isn't super sharp, but it's sharp enough to cut through the clay. And again, you can use just a normal knife that you have in the kitchen, in your kitchen drawer. This tool, you'll have a tool like this from your kit as well if you got the adult kit. I like this one particularly because it has the rounded edge at the end here, and when you're wanting to get inside a vessel, if your fingers aren't long enough, you can smooth the inside with this, so these are really good. And also a rib tool, which if you don't have a rib tool, don't panic. This is great for compressing the clay when you've rolled it and for smoothing the clay surfaces as you're coming towards the end of building your piece. But if you don't have one of these, don't panic, because you can actually, I was using my old library card before, so you can use a plastic card that you have, like an old one that you don't use anymore. It does the same thing. So these are the tools, and also a roller. I have a bowl of water. It's kind of dirty. It's a bowl of water I've already used today. And also with your rolling pin, I have two pieces of wood that I lay down either side here. Now these are great because this is about a 1/4 inch thick, but you can, if you don't have pieces of wood like this, you can use pencils. You can have 2 pencils laid down for the rolling pin to go over. You can tape some lollipop sticks together, which is something I've done before as well. Super easy, so you can choose the thickness. And all this does is it means that the clay that you're going to roll out is a consistent thickness all the way along, and it just gives you a nicer finish, makes your life a bit easier. So when rolling your clay, if you concentrate on the middle section of the clay, and actually you keep lifting and turning, it's good to flip it over as well. Now I'm going to try and create a longer piece than a wider piece here, because obviously it's easier to follow the length of my piece of wood. And the pieces that you're going to cut out of this, you're going to cut a circle for the base, and then you're going to cut a long rectangular piece, which is going to be the side walls of your vessel. So if you kind of try and roll out a piece that's longer than it is fat, it'll just make your life a bit easier. So I'm just going to roll this out. Sometimes it's good to stand up at this point and use your body weight, because I'm really weak. So I find that if you want to do this, so roll and then just lift and flip. If your clay is a little bit dry, you might find that you have some cracks around the edges here. Don't worry too much about that, because we can add a tiny bit of water whilst we're building, and this will just moisten it back up again. So if you just concentrate, as I say, from the middle, if you see any air bubbles forming in the clay, you can actually just use your needle tool, make a hole, just smooth it over there, and then when you put the roller over it, it will get rid of that air bubble for you. If you're using the clay for the kiln, you do want to try and avoid having any air bubbles in your piece, because they can explode in the kiln. So it's all very dramatic and exciting, but we want to try and avoid that if possible. So this clay is almost rolled out. Just going to make sure my piece of fabric doesn't get bunched up, so it's not making a weird pattern on the inside with the fabric. So I'm not getting any air bubbles there, that's good. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to make a huge pot today, I'm just showing you this so you can see the technique. So when you've rolled out your clay like this, I'm just sort of estimating with my eye, I'm eyeballing it, so I'm going to have a base about here, and then the rest of this piece will be the side wall that goes around the outside of my pot. Now if you haven't rolled it out, or you don't feel like it's long enough, don't worry, you can just cut the piece that you need for the base. and re-roll this again. So don't worry if you don't get it first time. It's not the end of the world, it's fine. So when you roll out your clay, and you've checked for any obvious air bubbles, if there's any in there that we missed. If you do get imprints from the fabric bunching up, don't worry, you can just actually smooth those over with your finger. A great thing to do at this stage, now that you've rolled it out, is we're actually gonna use the rib tool to compress the clay. If you're compressing the clay together at this point, you're less likely to get cracks in your pot. Now, I have forgotten to do this when I've been making pots in the past, and they've not cracked still, but this is just an extra way to be extra sure that you're not gonna get cracks when your piece is drying after you've made it. So all you're doing is toward yourself, if you hold the rib tool at a 45-degree angle and just gently, you're just firmly but gently just smoothing over the clay, just bringing it towards you, not affecting the thickness too much. But this also, if you've got any air bubbles, you can just see them coming through. Just pop those with your needle tool. Okay, so we've compressed the clay. Now all we're going to do now is I'm going to use, you can really use your imagination with what tools you use. I actually am just using an old jar lid to, there's an old guy walking past and looking at me through the window like I'm crazy. I'm just using an old jar lid, and I'm just literally going to place that down. You don't need to press it on, just gently place it on the clay. And we're just going to go around the outside with the needle tool. So you literally just cut through. You can use the needle tool or you can use the knife tool, whichever one you feel most confident with. I just feel personally when going around a circle that this tool follows a circle easier than the knife tool, that's all. Personal preference. So when you've done that, gently lift the lid away. If it sticks to the lid, it's not a problem, just gently take it away. So what we've got there is our base for our vessel. So we're just going to lay that on the side there. Now with the rest of this piece of clay, what I like to do, it's just easy. We're going to cut a long rectangular piece of clay from this to create the wall around the side of the vessel. I'm just going to go ahead and use this piece of wood, and using the knife tool, straight down, and just cut either side. You can just use these spare bits, just keep them to the side. If you want to add any extra handles or a face on your pot or something like that, you can use this. So just keep it to the side. Now you're going to end up with a piece like this. So it's the same thickness as your base, everything's the same thickness, so it's nice and neat. There's different methods to do this, but I'm just showing you the way that I find is easiest. So with my lid that I have here, just to make sure that roughly I'm getting the right length of rectangle, there's a marking on the side of the lid here, it's the best before date I think. So I'm just going to go from the first letter, place that down and roll it along just gently. And where the L touches the clay again, that's, you know, that's as much as you need. So I'm just going to get rid of some of the excess here just to make life easier for myself. This is roughly a little bit bigger than what I'm going to need. I've just cut it down to size to make it a little bit more manageable. So what you do now is we're going to connect these two pieces together. So this is going to make the walls of our pot, and this is the base right here. So what we're going to do to connect two pieces of clay to each other and make sure that they stay stuck together, you use a method called scoring and slipping. Scoring is literally just messing up the surface of the clay where you know the two pieces are going to join together. So you do little crisscrosses with a sharp tool. You can use a fork, you can use a needle tool, you can use a nail that you would use to put a picture in the wall. So all I'm doing, and I'll show you, I'll lift it up to show you, is around the outside of my base, my circle, I'm going around the outside and I'm just kind of messing up, not going in too deep, but just scratching the surface. And then if you go across the other way as well, so you've got little crosses, and you do this all the way around. So this is called scoring. If you find as well when you're making your pieces, if your clay seems really too wet and it's a bit floppy and it's hard to manage, you can at this stage, you can just let your clay lay out for maybe 5-10 minutes and the air will dry it just enough. It will get rid of some of the moisture just so that it's a little bit easier to manage. So if you leave it out, if it feels too wet, keep checking on it, keep going back to check on it. It will just make it a little bit easier to manage. So this is a really good stage at the moment, so I'm happy to carry on. And what you will do now as well, because obviously one edge of this is going to stick to the base, so what will be the bottom of our pot here, this is going to stick to the base here. We're going to just go ahead and score the underside of this piece as well. So you'll just go down like this, all the way down this side with the needle tool or whatever you're using to score. And then just go ahead and go back and go the opposite way, just so it really kind of scratches it up a bit. Up to this point now we have our scored base, and we've also scored the inside edge here. Now this piece isn't necessarily going to be the right length to go around the outside of the pot. So all you do at this point, without pressing it on too hard, just because you don't want it to stick just yet, we're just going to measure and get our pieces so that they line up. All we're going to do is we're going to cut down the side of the clay so that you have about 1/2 centimetre extra. They're overlapping about 5 millimeters, if you can just see there. So we have a little bit of extra clay there to play with. And then all you do, just gently take that off. We're just going to lay this down. If you try and join two pieces of clay together that are flat, you're not really getting a huge surface area for the two pieces to join. So just to make this a little bit easier for ourselves and to have a sturdier pot, what you do is actually take the knife, whichever knife tool you have, and at a 45-degree angle, so you want the knife to be like this, you're just going to go along with the tip on the table, and you just cut a 45-degree piece of clay off. So basically you're creating what is effectively a ramp, like this. And when you've done one side, you actually just flip the clay over the other way around like this. And then you do the same on the opposite end. The reason we do this is it just gives you a bigger surface area for you to score and stick the two pieces together, and it just creates a stronger bond. I'll just show you with these tools as well to better explain. So one of your pieces is a ramp going this way, and then on the other side, when the two sides join, your piece of clay looks like this. So when they join together, you have a much bigger surface area for the two pieces to join, and it just gives you a stronger bond. So now that you've done that, you've already scored your base here. You've scored one side of the long piece along the bottom. You can actually just go ahead and score the ramps on each side of the clay, because you're also going to stick those two pieces together. So any surfaces that you're going to stick together, you want to score to help stick the pieces. Now what I'm going to use is a slip, which is just it's a bit of scrap clay of the type of clay that you're using. So this is a bit of red clay smushed in with some water until you get a bit of a paste, and this works as a really good glue. If your clay is particularly wet, you can actually just use a bit of water at this stage, but if you have time to make a tiny bit of slip, I would recommend doing it because it just makes your joins so much stronger. And I'm literally just putting a bit of slip on all of the areas that I've scored with the needle tool. Okay, this is just going to go straight down onto the top of your base. If you line it up so that it's as close to the edge as you can, work it all the way around. You should still have a tiny bit of overlap left, which is good, because what you're going to do is you're just going to squish gently where the join is, where it overlaps, just all the way down, just so you've got that cylinder shape. This is nice, so it's level around the edges. And now all we're going to do is, if you cup your hands like this, hold the side of your vessel, and if you actually just gently press down, just very gently, and turn slightly, if you rotate it left and right very slightly, you will feel that it all starts to grab on the join and it will stick, and you know that that's stuck properly because you can't move it this. If it's not wiggling, you know that it's stuck. And all you need to do at this point is smooth the join on the outside of your pot and also on the inside, just so you don't see that join anymore. So you can just use your thumb to smooth over that join. And on the inside again, just use your thumb. If you can't get into the inside of your pot, if your thumb's too short, which mine is a little bit short for this, you can actually use your tool with the curved edge and just smooth it over using the tool. These can be really handy, because sometimes if you try and cram your hand in there to smooth something over, and I've done this, you can just squash the top of the pot and it's really upsetting. So it's good to just go in with a tool if you're not sure and just smooth it over. If you have pressure on one side, always try and have counter pressure on the other side just to match it so that you're not squashing the shape of your pot. So when you're happy that you've smoothed over the outside join, all we're going to do is just gently flip the pot over, and you want to smooth from the top down, so from the base of the pot you're going to smooth that down onto the side here, and I'm just going around with my finger and again just smoothing that join over. You don't need it to be perfect at this stage, you're literally just smoothing over joins and making sure that you've got a good connection between the two pieces of clay. I'm sorry if you can hear my chair squeaking as well, I promise it's my chair. It's really squeaky. So you just work your way around, just take a little bit of time just smoothing over this gap, because you want this join to be quite strong. So if you smooth it over nicely, that'll just strengthen the bond. So I'm happy with that so far. This is my pot structure. Now for aesthetic reasons, I'm gonna choose to, I'm happy that all of my edges are joined here, all of my joins are nice and strong, but I want a smoother look on my pot. So all I'm gonna do is using the rib tool, and you can use your thumb here to hold it and press it so that you've got a slight curve. And again, you can do this with your library card. If you press in the middle, but fan your fingers out more on the outside, it creates a curve. And this is gonna follow the edge of your pot slightly better than if it's just completely flat. So what I like to do, and this is just personal preference, just again, with my fingers on the inside of the pot, so I'm reinforcing the inside of the side of the pot, I'm just gonna gently, starting from the bottom, tucking it under slightly, just drag it up the side here like this. And I'm just gonna work all the way around the outside of my pot doing this, and it just gives it a neater finish. So if you want that kind of rustic look where it's a little bit textured, or if you have some texture still from the piece of fabric that you've rolled your clay out on, sometimes it's nice to keep that texture on it. But for me in this case, I'm just working my way around, dragging the rib tool from just underneath here at the bottom, and then bringing it up. It's just smoothing all of my edges. So I like to do this on most of my pots. If you feel as well, because sometimes, and I've done it before, if you're looking at the side of your pot and the bottom's sticking out a little bit more, just from where the join is on the base, and you don't feel that it's straight down, this is a really good time to use this tool and actually, again, just gently, if you tuck it in just underneath and with slightly more pressure just at the bottom, when you're pulling it up, it will straighten that bottom edge and it will give you a more vertical side to your pot. It's just experimenting with different tools like this and getting used to the feel of what you can do with the clay. Just practice, try different things. You know, if you go wrong with this, don't worry. If you've already had a bit of an accident and you've not got to this stage, don't worry, just squish it. Take some pleasure in just squashing the clay and just start again. There's no trouble in just starting again. So at this point, I have smoother edges. I'm happy with the shape of my pot. All I'm gonna do now is, you can actually, again, if you can't get your finger right on the inside, it's nice to use a paintbrush and you can either have a little bit of slip on it. You don't want it to be too saturated and fluid at this point. So if you get a little bit of the paste solution on your paintbrush, or if you're just using water, you could dip your paintbrush in the water and then just get some of the moisture off on this cotton here. And then you can use the paintbrush to just smooth the inside join. You don't have to go in super heavy-handed, just lightly, and you'll find that it's amazing the difference it makes to the look of the join on the inside if you just smooth over with either a tiny bit of slip or a damp brush just to smooth it over. Another tip to actually strengthen your pot, and you can do this if you're wheel throwing or if you're hand building, if anything's really going to crack when this dries, it's going to be this top lip. So if you compress it, then it actually strengthens it and you're less likely to get a crack. So I'm going to do that. An easy way to do it is to get just this is kind of a beat up, just a kitchen sponge. And I've used this quite a lot, so it looks a bit worse for wear. But if you fold it at the end like this and create a little V shape, and then dip it in some water, squeeze the water out. You only want it to be damp, you don't want it to be saturated. And then just place that little V that you've created in the sponge, like a little mouth. You can just run that around the edge of the top of your clay. You don't want to press on too hard. Always support your structure with your other hand, just so that you're not bending it out of shape. And you just gently run that sponge around the top edge. It really just neatens the lip of your vessel, the rim. And also, because I'm pressing down slightly as I'm doing this, it's compressing the clay and it's strengthening that rim on your piece. So I'm just going to go all the way around. If you want a thinner rim at the top, so if for example you want to be able to drink out of this, if you're having something fired and then glazed so that you can drink out of it, what you can actually do is, before doing this stage, and I'll just show you, you can actually just gently pinch around the top. So just your thumb and your finger, if you just gently pinch, so it's thinning the top of your clay to just the thickness that you want it to be. And then you can, after you've done that, you can actually go around and just do the same process with the sponge. It gives you a slightly thinner top edge there. So you'd be more likely to have it. It's just nice to have a thinner edge to drink of if you're drinking out of something. But I think this is just going to be a cute little pot with a face on it, because I kind of stick faces on everything. And I can just use it for my pencils and things like that on my desk. Or maybe give it to someone else. You can also use a damp sponge if you haven't gone around and spent the time going over it with your rib tool to smooth it out. You can actually just gently smooth it over with a damp sponge, and it can get rid of any little dinks or little extra bits of clay that you want to get rid of. And this is what we've ended up with, just a nice little pot. No joins that you can see because you've smoothed it over. If you find, because this clay was, I nearly fell off my chair. If the clay that you're using is quite wet, then you shouldn't have too many problems with the clay cracking as you're bending it to go around this outside, or when you're putting, you shouldn't find that it cracks too much. If you are getting clay that's cracking, because it's been out in the air a little bit, don't panic, it's fine. You can actually just add a little bit of water to the surface of the clay where it's cracking and smooth it over with your finger. So don't be afraid of little cracks in your clay. Just try and get to them before they get too big, and you can just smooth them over with your finger with a little bit of water on your finger, and then you can really just smooth any cracks over and you're good to carry on. So don't worry if you see some cracks. I'm going to show you how to put a couple of little handles on this, just so it gives it an extra something. So I'm just going to get some clay and just roll it out. I like to put faces on mine, so for example, this is an example. This is the red clay, so this is what it looks like when it's been fired and when it's been glazed with clear glaze in the kiln. So you can see the difference. You get a slightly nicer red tone when it's dried and been put through the kiln. If you add things, if you want this to be fired, but you want to add extra things to your pot, so a nose or some eyes, things like this, you just have to try and be mindful that you're not going too thick with the clay. We have a vessel here already that we've made, and all of the edges, the base and the walls, they're the same thickness. So this is going to dry at an even rate. If you start adding things on, like huge noses and eyeballs and things like this, which you can add to a certain degree, you just have to be mindful that when it dries, a larger piece of clay that you've attached is going to dry more slowly than the wall because it's a thicker piece of clay. This is when you get cracks. So if you do end up putting extra things on your pot, all I would recommend is when it's drying, when you've finished it, lay a piece of cling film over it, or gently lay a plastic bag over it so that it dries much more slowly, and you're not going to have to worry about cracks developing between the pieces that are thicker and thinner. So all I'm doing now to make some little handles, I'm just rolling out a piece of clay here. You don't want to go too thin because you want it to have a little bit of something that you can hold on to. This is just the way that I make handles, so if you find as well when you're rolling, this happens sometimes to me, and it's just kind of going into like a flat shape, so it's hard to roll because it's more rectangular. Just go through and squish it a little bit on the edges to make it more of a cylinder again, more like a worm. And then you can go back in again. It just makes it a lot easier. You want to try and have this is also called, this is a coil, basically a worm or a coil. And you just want to try and make it the same thickness all the way down if you can. Sometimes it takes a few goes just to practice. And to make my little handles, you can literally cut with anything, so I'm just going to cut with this. I'm going to create two pieces the same length. And all I'm going to do with these two little pieces, about the size, it's basically the length of my finger, I'm just going to gently bend it over. Now I'm just adding a tiny bit of water with my finger to this because it's cracking a little bit as I'm bending it. So just very slowly, if your clay is drying out a little bit and you're getting cracks on that bend, just as you're slowly bending the clay, just blend it over with your finger with a tiny bit of water on the end of your finger, and this just stops it from cracking. So this is what you end up with. Just a little loop. And I'm going to do the same with my other piece. And again, I'm just going to add some water to where the bend is going to be with my finger, like this, and then just slowly bend it. And just pay attention to see if your clay is really wet, you don't have to worry so much about this, but because this has been set on the side a little bit, I'm just smoothing it over. Okay, so I've made my two little loops here, like this, and these are going to be my little handles. All I do is if you press this bottom bit together a little bit, lay it flat on the table, and all I'm doing is the bottom bit here, where the two pieces join, I'm just going to squish that together and blend it over on both sides. You end up with this. All I need to do is just pinch them together, and I can just literally blend that bottom bit over. So those are your two handles, and then all you need to do, I mean, you don't have to add that, you can make different shaped handles. All you need to do is make sure that you're scoring and slipping both sides of the clay. So I'm just going to really scratch up that inside handle, and then I'm going to scratch up on the side of the vessel where it's going to go, and then I'm going to add a tiny bit of slip to both sides of where it's going to join. And again, always having pressure on the inside when there's pressure on the outside. I'm just going to press that on the side there, and I'm actually going to just use my thumb to push in that bottom bit and blend it onto the side of the pot. I'll show you, I'll lift it up and show you. So I'm just literally just squashing that on. So I'm just squashing it, that bottom bit, I'm just really flattening it out with my thumb and blending it onto the side. But like I say, if you're putting pressure on the outside of this pot here, always have your fingers on the inside so it doesn't cave in on itself. So when you're happy that you've blended that on, and then it's nice and secure, like this. What I like to do is just actually gently bend that over. So I have a little handle on the side like this. Super simple, but kind of cute. I like it. So this is what I do on the side of my pots anyway. You can literally put this, you can make this bigger, you can put it lower down on the pot, you could have the handles in the middle, whatever your imagination is telling you, just go for it. So I'm just gonna have one of these on each side. And you could add like whatever you want. You could add huge ears to this pot. You could add, you could turn it into an animal. I'm just showing you the basic techniques at this point for how to join pieces of clay together in a way that they're gonna hold strong. I'm really happy with this. I think it looks super cute. So this is just a simple slab built vessel with some cute little handles on it. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to seeing your creations, so tag us in your pictures. See you soon. Bye.